everybody. I'd like to welcome you today to the IHHA Quadcast. My name is Dr. Jeff Essen. I'm here interviewing Nikki Peters, a good old friend of mine that we'll introduce here. I'll just read her bio here. Nikki is the founder and CEO of Studio 9 to 5, which brings wellness practices into companies, residential properties, and organizations. With a 20-year career in wellness and the fitness industry and a passion for creating environments of healthy living, connection, and flourishing business. Nikki started her 9 to 5 after previously generating $4.5 million annually while helping to build the world's largest yoga brand. Her areas of study include a BS in kinesiology, a BA in music. She's a certified personal trainer, ER4YT yoga instructor. Just make sure I got that right. Certified functional nutritional therapy practitioner, life coach and leadership and development through training through CTI, mindfulness educator with a training in trauma, resilience, and meditation, and as a certified workplace wellness expert through the NWA. I'm assuming not the band.
Right.
Nikki's passion is creating transformational wellness experiences that help to uplift the culture of the workplace and the world. Her signature Studio 9 to 5 mindfulness training program has been presented at a number of high-performance companies and organizations, including the U.S. Air Force, General Mills, Dorsey and Whitney, LLP, and Children's Hospital, to name a few. Her speaking experiences range from podcasts to news segments to webinars to seminars, workshops in both virtual and in-person conferences on multiple topics of wellness, well-being, fitness, nutrition, mindfulness, and just getting the crowd moving. Indeed. Recently this year, Nikki celebrated her 40th birthday and has been nominated for the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award. Very impressive bio you've got there. To let everybody know, Nikki and I met at the Nutritional Therapy Association training for the NTP. Both Rachel and myself were going through that training. Nikki was in our class, and we just kind of ended up sitting by each other, talking with each other, sometimes pairing up to do the partner work. And Nikki I recognized Nikki as a very brilliant person. I knew right away that she was a person I wanted to get to know. So Nikki, thank you. Welcome to our Quadcast. Just kind of really had some basic fundamentals I wanted to get from you, because as much as I know about, wellness and holistic health, I can't say I know a lot of detail about yoga. I know of it. I can't say I know about it. So please, if you could fill me in from the start, where did yoga develop and when did it develop and how did that all come to being?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This is really exciting to be able to chat with you, Jeff, in this way, this fashion. And thank you for welcoming me. I'm just excited to be here and chat about yoga. It certainly has been a big passion of mine for many, many years. And when it comes to the roots of yoga, I like to point people back to the best formed roots of yoga. I think there was probably roots of yoga that predated even what we now would call the Yoga Sutras. And the Yoga Sutras were formed by someone named Patanjali, who basically put the practices of yoga into writing in what's called sutras, which is a fancy word kind of for verses. So you can read the origins of yoga, what yoga means, what it stands for, what the purpose of it is, fundamentally going back to the Yoga Sutras by Patanjali. And but of course, as anything that started before it came in writing, right, there was probably many generations, I think, of time where these types of traditions were practiced and handed down verbally and through action and through generations of time. That's what I believe. And so the area that this originated in was in an area that predates Hinduism and Buddhism. So yoga actually began prior to the rise of Hinduism and Buddhism in this land. And then Hinduism and Buddhism adopted yoga into a part of their practices as those two religions kind of came to be in their rightful places. So it was a really interesting and beautiful practice. There's so much to learn about yoga. Some of the biggest things I think that have carried through from the time it began into even the type of work that you do, is looking at the 7 energy centers of the body and working with those, what we call chakras, or 7 energy centers of the body. We could talk a little bit more about that too, but I'll stop there and just see if you have questions first.
And already this is like getting people in over their heads a little bit, but that's cool. That's exactly what we want to do. We want to stretch people's minds here. And so here's this ancient Indus Valley practice, again, probably starting off well before writing came about. People began to mimic things and say, hey, here, let's try this out. And if it works, great, we'll adopt it. If we don't, we'll not adopt that. And that's how a lot of practices developed in history. Now, of those things that were adopted, those things that have continued and are present today, how does one see benefits from yoga? What would one expect if one got into yoga, started at the basic level and worked your way up? What kind of things would you see in your overall health picture?
Well, the practices and benefits are numerous because there's many different types of practices of yoga. So there's something that we would see typically practiced in the US today would be something called vinyasa flow. This is a type of yoga, or even power yoga that would be a derivative of vinyasa yoga. But there are other types of yoga like yin yoga or kundalini yoga, which have more of a yin aspect or energy to it, much more restorative type of work, much slower, very, very, very easeful in nature, whereas vinyasa can be a little bit more about flow and movement and so forth. So it depends on the type of yoga that you're practicing for the benefits, but in general, I would say yoga is typically amazing for balancing the energy of one's body. So it balances both the right and the left hemispheres of the brain and the body as you go through the postures. And many times the way the sequences have been created and handed down throughout the years of time is very much related to the way the 7 energy centers or the chakras would be opened up or utilized for healing in the person's body and mind, soul, spirit as they're practicing. So hopefully that gives a little bit of a broader background to some of the benefits, but specifically, if I were to say, how do athletes use yoga, right? I would say that they're using it, of course, for increased flexibility, increased range of motion, but also the breath work is specifically important because it helps to oxygenate the body in a numerous amount, and gets oxygen into the cell, which of course is going to create a whole lot more healing in the body, even chemically. And so there's multiple ways we could go with benefits, but I think nowadays, of course, increased balance, flexibility, attention span, faster healing, getting the body into a parasympathetic state so that you can rebalance some of the stress response, cholesterol, those types of things going on in the body.
Sure. And that does kind of round it out, that it's not just one focused single idea. It's broad spectrum. It's a whole body practice.
Right. Absolutely.
And the work that I do, and many of the people who are going to be tuning into this Quadcast are in the same practice kind of and biofeedback testing. And often we'll see in our test results is that somebody has either a sympathetic dominance or parasympathetic dominance or a underperforming parasympathetic. Now, when we view that, we view it from a brain chemistry and brainwave pattern of this person is easily triggered into their fight or flight mechanism based on this or that. When I'm assigning people therapy for that, breath work is my go-to, because as we know, the lungs, the breathing mechanism, the whole operation of breathing in and out is the only system of the body that can be under the control of either the sympathetic or the parasympathetic. And the more you exercise your conscious control of your breath, the more that can become the dominant feature, which is then under your control. So you don't have brain hecticness and inflammation and crazy things going on without your consent. Okay.
That's right.
So if you could please describe for me the actual process of yogic breathing in terms of how does it begin? What's the process? How do you hold, or how do you go about that?
Yeah. Well, just like there are many different styles of practicing yoga, there's also many different types of breath work as well. For example, in a restorative yoga session, they would be teaching you how to breathe low and slow into your body, breathing into your belly, and it would be inhales through the nose and most likely open mouth exhales. So this would be a releasing style breath, or a type of breathing pattern that opens the body up to relaxation, release. Again, parasympathetic state is able to turn on, and getting the body into a full rest and rejuvenation space. If we were talking about vinyasa yoga, for example, we'd be utilizing a breath called ujjayi pranayama breathing. Ujjayi is a way of breathing that starts to harness the breath in a powerful way, so that you are recirculating the breath's energy through your body as you're moving through circulation postures. So the type of breathing work for that would be inhaling and exhaling through your nose, but you're using a slight constriction in the back of the throat. And so there's a texture and a sound to the breath, and it sounds and looks somewhat like this. So it's an inhale, exhale. I'm not sure if you can hear that.
Yeah.
But there's a slight constriction happening there in the back of the throat. And this is called a bandha, or an energy pump or energy lock that you're creating there in the throat. It feels like a little bit like when you create like an oceanic sound with your breathing pattern. It's a little bit like that. So that slight constriction there in the back of the throat actually narrows the breathing pathway a little bit, so that the energy is starting to get pumped. Now, the second pump is down in the belly area, in the second chakra, so located by underneath the belly button. You're drawing the navel in and up as well. So you've got two pumps happening, one lower, one higher. So as you inhale with this breath, you're drawing the belly in, and you're breathing in through the nose. As you exhale, you're still drawing the belly in. And so it pushes the breath up into the ribs and the thoracic cavity. And it's a continual pump that's happening as you're flowing. So that's what we use with vinyasa flow. It would be ujjayi pranayama breathing.
Wow. That's amazing that somebody came, and it always reminds me of this thing in the back of the throat. It's that same area and mechanism used if you're swimming underwater and you're trying to block water from coming up your nose. It's kind of that same area controlled by the glossopharyngeal and hypoglossal nerves, to just kind of protect the back of the throat from any kind of inhaled toxins or smoke that we would want to block out, or again, water. So it's kind of an interesting practice. And people can maybe visualize it based on that. Now, flexible versus strong, we did cover that a little bit, but there seems to be, like you said, in the United States, we tend to, grab things from other cultures and make them ours. So I know people who are doing yoga for the sake of athletics, strength. I know people who are doing it for rejuvenation, maybe recovery from injury. Is there a version of yoga that is less physical and more energetic, or vice versa? And what kind of brands do those have now that we'd see them in the US?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the most energetic style of yoga, if I were to answer that, would be Kundalini. It is all breath work and energy. It is a very powerful practice. Again, they will focus very much on those 7 energy centers. I think Kundalini, keeps a lot of the historical aspects of yoga within it still. If you're looking for something that's more energetic, not that you're going to not get, energetic practice in another style. It just depends, I think, a lot of times on what the teacher has had access to, who the teacher has studied with, how many years have they studied and practiced yoga. I mean, I do think it's still very important to find reputable and highly trained people when it comes to any type of practice that you're searching for. But specifically someone with great training will be able to incorporate all different styles depending on what student they have in front of them and what the student's needs are.
Right. They can customize it to the individual, what they need. Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
And I've seen that version where it's like you're basically doing yoga in a sauna and people are just sweating profusely. Is that okay for everybody? Is that something there should be caution about?
Well, I will admit to that was my life for 10 years. The sweating in the hot yoga rooms. Yes, I mean, of course, there was Bikram yoga that began in the USA prior to core power yoga. Both styles of yoga are practiced in a heated environment. They're two different styles, though, different practices. But both are in a heated environment. And, in some way, Jeff, it feels like when you practice yoga in a heated environment, to me, it almost feels like I'm in the Indus Valley, like I'm in a hot space where I probably would be, and so there's some kind of aspect also to the heat that turns on the abilities, the body's abilities to detox, a little bit easier. Obviously, it opens up the pores, you're sweating and all those types of things. So the detox is a little bit more. Certainly, there are going to be precautions if there are people who are going through certain types of illnesses that would prevent them from being in a 100-degree room, then yes, by all means, if you're not really supposed to go into a sauna, you won't be wanting to walk into a hot yoga studio room, most likely. But I personally loved that practice for many years, being in the heat. It was very, very detoxifying. And I love that. I love that about it.
And there's where we could throw in the fancy word autophagy, and
Yeah.
sweating can help push toxins out of our body. That's well documented, and it was one of the hot topics now in discussion is how does one induce autophagy? Well, fasting and sweating. Well, you can do them both in a yoga studio. So cool.
But be careful. Don't go into a 100-degree room when you're not necessarily when you're fasting. That might be a little bit too intense. I don't know. I mean, definitely would need to be juicing and have enough nutrients to, give you the energy and to detox that way.
Maybe a power shake or something. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So you run a sort of corporate yoga wellness program where you're on site in businesses. Now, what would one see differently in that kind of setting versus, say, in a studio or at home?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was a big thing, as we started Studio 9 to 5, how can we bring the benefits of this practice into a space that we know is a little bit more, it's, I don't want to say closed, to spiritual type experiences, but, we're in an office, so we need to be open to all different types of opinions and awarenesses about this. So we certainly, instead of using words like Patanjali and Uddiyana Bandha and, Ujjayi Pranayama and these types of things, we've changed some of the language so that it's a little bit more approachable. We're using the English words versus the Sanskrit words, which, I mean, I love the Sanskrit words. They have a rhythm to it. There were, there's power in words. And I believe that the original language has a lot of power when you speak and teach in that way. But for this purposes, we've changed the language so that we're, creating and saying the English names of the posture so people can understand easily. And we will use themes that are a little bit easier for people to reach. So things like gratitude, or connecting with peace, or connecting with the present moment, concepts that everybody can access. And then, of course, focusing on the types of postures and sequences that bring about balance in the body, specifically getting us into that rest, digest state of being. In the office, a lot of times people are stressed out. So the goal for this type of practice is to help them find the other side of the coin and find some life balance.
Very nice. And how I phrase it to my patients a lot of time, even if only just for 5 minutes, set the stress clock back to zero. Just
Yes.
find a little bit of a peace, even if it's at work, to then the rest of your day can be crappy, but at least you found that 0 point.
Yeah.
I like that idea. And as far as any kind of studies or information about if people would participate in something like this in a workplace environment, are there benefits to be seen for the employees or the employer?
Absolutely. Yeah, because one thing about when we create programs like this with Studio 9 to 5 inside of companies, a lot of time we're helping them to build out an employee wellness program. Sometimes they have already certain types of things built out, and sometimes they don't have anything. And so if they don't have anything, we're coming in to help them strategize and design an entire wellness program for their company. And that could include maybe, a few yoga classes a week, but sometimes it also includes health coaching. It includes mindfulness training programs where we just focus on breathing and stress relief and those types of things and take all the yoga out of it. And sometimes it's even fitness classes, personal training, massage therapy, health coaching, nutrition webinars and seminars to help people understand a little bit more, how to eat healthy. So it just depends on what the needs are for the company that we work with, and then we'll build it to create a kind of a full-blown wellness experience for employees.
And from my understanding is that the reason why wellness programs in business exist is because the benefit for the employer is that they have happier employees, and that those employees may be more productive, they may be more relaxed, they better retention of those employees. So those kinds of things can come in with that kind of program, where that happy, balanced, peaceful employee ends up being a better fit than that person you're trying to cram in there and just force them to work hard all day.
Absolutely. And the financial kickback for that is every dollar you spend on a wellness program, you save $4 in health insurance costs for employees.
Oh, that's amazing.
So there's a wonderful kickback too from the financial side for a business to be incentivized from a financial standpoint to create wellness programming as well.
So let's just say I'm sitting at my desk and I'm in between patients. I've got this person just left and I got 10, 15 minutes before my next patient arrives. What can I do just sitting there in my office? What would be an example of just a short little program to work with some version of yoga and or wellness that you can teach people?
Well, we actually do deliver virtual 15-minute mindfulness classes. And so we have a company, for example, it's a worldwide company. So we teach several classes a day at different time slots because we have people logging in from India, Italy, the UK, Canada, and the US, all over. So we've got people logging in for 15 minutes of time. We're doing a mindfulness experience for them, which will help them go from being in a stress state into a more relaxed state of being. So we'll be going through breathing techniques with them. Usually it's a themed experience as well. So we'll be focusing on, for example, if the company is focusing on gratitude in the month of November as a wellness theme, then the class will be themed toward gratitude and help employees actually connect with something that they're grateful for. And so it's one thing to like hypothetical, but it's another thing to just actually have somebody sit down and walk you through a virtual experience like that. All of our classes virtually are live with live instructors. So we're always building relationship in these types of classes with people. So it's not like a pre-recorded situation. it is live. So that's a really nice way to keep
And
the,
so then and there can be some little feedback back and forth and answer questions and yeah.
yeah,
Cool.
exactly.
All right, so we're going to kind of wind down here. I just wanted to tell people though that as the instructor for the energetics course for the IHHA Academy's naturopathic classes, I'm the teacher of the energy course. And so when Nikki was talking about the energy centers, otherwise known as the chakras, and I did my best attempt to try to explain those to people. And so in terms of if one, as a biofeedback practitioner, you find that somebody's chakras are off, right? A particular chakra is off. There's relationships that we found in the class to the meridians. There's relationships to different organs and glands. And now we know that you can balance these organs by either breathing exercises or doing yoga poses. And so that's something that I just wanted to put out there, is that for those people who are going to our courses, this is a very good set of information, and further exploration of this. Nikki, be a very good person to get hold of. Any one of our people who own businesses or would like to refer on, Nikki's got a good website, and we can maybe kind of plug her a little bit, that she'd be an excellent source of information and guidance where any of these things are concerned. And so we'll put her website down the bottom. It's studio925.com, correct?
Studio9to5wellness.com.
Wellness.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I forgot that part. All right. So one last thing I want to throw by you just to see what your thoughts are on it. I was taking an online course once, and it was describing the idea of runic magic. Now, in many cultures all around the world, a symbol, a drawn symbol, a letter, a word would have a power of its own. And that there were people who were practitioners of runic magic, and they would try to, in modern terminology, they would try to augment the process of physics to move energy to have their physical world change in a way to the positive. Now, in that case, it was described by the instructor that yoga is somebody moving their body to form a symbol. The breathing exercises are to bring the power, the prana in to power the spell, and that yoga is just trying to adapt that person's runic magic to benefit themselves in terms of energetic spell.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would tune it in terms of light. So the chakras, the 7 energy centers, are the same 7 colors that you would see in a rainbow, right? Yep. And we are made up of mostly water. But what happens when, we get a rainbow in the sky? There's a bending of the light and water connection, correct? So what's happening in yoga is that we're actually trying to reconnect or realign those energy centers or those colors of light so that the light can actually move through the energy centers effectively. So yes, there is a kind of a retuning of light, of the light source of what we were created to function as, that I believe happens in the practice of yoga. And there are sounds, of course. There's, in the practice of yoga, you might be doing some chanting or things like that. Kind of like Qigong and these other types of practices, you can use sound as well for each of these energy centers to start to tune each one into the frequency that it is best gets the most light or the most energy through. So yes, the postures themselves are unlocking and tuning as you go, and how, whether you call it a spell or of some kind. I look at it more as light refracting light, or light returning, so that the person is enlightened, as they continue to practice the practice of yoga.
Excellent. Well, thanks for your opinion on that. I didn't know what to think when I heard that. I was like, okay, sure. All right. So we'll end there. I thank you so much. You've been a delight and a wealth of information. This has been really cool. This has been lots of fun. Thanks for connecting. We'll go ahead and publish this on our website. I'll give you a link back to that if you want to go ahead and use it yourself. Appreciate your time. I know you're very much in demand, so I give you gratitude in this month of giving, and so I hope things go well. And again, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Jeff.
All right. Bye-bye.
As we conclude, we'd like to remind you that the information presented in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be considered diagnostic. It's important to understand that our content is not intended as medical advice. The statements made during this podcast have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. Additionally, the content and attachments shared are not designed to treat, cure, prevent, or diagnose any disease. For any health-related concerns or conditions, we strongly advise consulting with your medical doctor for proper diagnosis and recommendations. Your health is important, and professional medical advice should always be sought for your specific circumstances. Now, be sure to tune in next week when Dr. Abdel Alkalouf will be chatting with Val Prisakaru about nutrigenomics. It's a topic shrouded in mystery for many, but we're ready to shed some light and maybe a few laughs too. Until then, keep your curiosity alive, but let the medical advice stay with the professionals. See you next week on the Quadcast.